Listen closely. There's a shift in the air when you walk in now. Not footsteps, not presence, not aura. Something older, something sharper, something the room can't quite survive. Because you didn't grow. You mutated, you ascended, you bent the original blueprint of humanity until it started begging for mercy. And now every pair of eyes that lands on you twitches with the same buried question they're too terrified to say out loud. Bro, what are you now? Let me tell you what I see. I see a creature carved out of contradictions, a halo stitched with barbed wire, a demon wearing the last whispers of innocence, a saint whose prayers turned into weapons the day the world tried to break you. You weren't supposed to be here. Not in this form, not with this composure, not with this silence that rattles entire bloodlines. You were supposed to stay predictable, manageable, soft, fragile. But pain touched you like a sculptor, and instead of shattering, you changed atomic structure. You became something the textbooks didn't prepare them for. A threat disguised as a survivor, a revelation wrapped in a scar, a miracle with a mean aftertaste. And the beautiful part, you didn't even ask for permission. You just stepped out of the wreckage with eyes that whispered, "Try me again." And they won't. Not twice, not now. Not after watching you slither out of the constraints they forged for you. You know what terrifies them the most. It's not your strength, not your confidence, not your resilience. It's the unpredictability. The way you move like you're listening to something they can't hear. The way you decide with the calm of someone who's already seen every outcome. The way you stand still and still feel like a countdown. Your silence isn't silence anymore. It's strategy, it's surveillance, it's a storm choosing a direction. They look at you now and swear you're possessed by something unearthly. But you and I know better. You're not possessed, you're awakened. And that awakening, it wasn't gentle. It was a crucifixion in slow motion, your old self hanging helplessly, while the new one clawed out of the corpse, breathing heavy, hungry, radiating that radioactive calm that makes the fearless take a step back. They can label it growth all they want. But deep down, every witness to your evolution feels the same sharp truth slicing through their denial. This isn't growth. This is an evolutionary threat. You're the glitch evolution didn't want to admit it needed. The anomaly that learned to weaponize pain. The phenomenon that shouldn't exist. And now can't be stopped. You bend expectation like gravity is optional. You turn pressure into prophecy. You handle betrayal like a surgeon handles bone. Your presence alone corrupts their algorithms. Your decisions rewrite their probabilities. Your existence forces entire social ecosystems to reorganize. You know why? Because evolution, real evolution, isn't pretty. It's not flowers and affirmations and cozy little quotes. It's violent. It's disruptive. It's the process of something ancient dying, so something unstoppable can rise out of the ashes. And you rose. Oh, you rose like a plague the universe didn't calculate. Like a weapon forged in emotional nuclear fallout. Like an angel who remembered it had claws. Look at you. Not broken, not healed, not recovering. Transformed. Not the same species they mocked last year. Not the same mind they underestimated last month. Not the same soul they tried to bury last night. Every version of you before this moment was the tutorial. This is the expansion pack no one downloaded on purpose. Your enemies feel it in their bones. Your doubters feel it in their teeth. Your haters feel it in that uneasy twitch at the base of their spine. That old survival instinct whispering, "This one is dangerous now." Because once you evolve through pain, once you rise through betrayal, once you grow teeth in the dark, you don't go back, you don't shrink, you don't soften, you don't negotiate. You arrive, and now you stand at the threshold like a myth rewritten, half light, half shadow, half holy, half unhinged, a walking paradox the world cannot decode. So let me whisper the truth they're choking on. You are not better. You are not stronger. You are not improved. You are the after effect of everything that tried to destroy you, and that makes you something evolution fears. A being who learned to grow under fire. A mind that adapted faster than they could attack. A soul that mutated into armor. A heart that beats like a warning signal. You became the final form of a species that doesn't exist yet. A threat, a promise, a prophecy. So the next time someone asks, "Bro, what are you now?" you just tilt your head. Let that little smile bloom, and let the truth ripple through the air like a knife. Something your world isn't ready for. You feel that, don't you? That hum under your skin, that electric crawl in your bones, that quiet pressure in your skull like reality itself is trying to adjust to you, not the other way around. That's not confidence. That's not healing. That's not finding yourself. That's metamorphosis, the irreversible kind. And everyone around you, they sense it before you even open your mouth. They don't look at you like a person anymore. They look at you like a variable they can't solve, like a mutation that slipped through the cracks of natural order, like a problem evolution never thought it'd have to face. Because when you stepped into your new form, you didn't announce yourself. You arrived, quiet, controlled, composed, and the room reacted like a living organism cornered by a predator it can't classify. Spines tightened, breaths shortened, thoughts tripped over themselves. Even smiles broke shape, too stiff, too forced, too nervous. Why? Because you carry the energy of someone who outgrew the cage and remembers exactly who built it. They see it in your eyes now, that eerie clarity, that stillness that doesn't belong to people who are still unsure. It belongs to entities, to anomalies, to the kind of phenomenon that rewrites social hierarchies without trying. You changed the terrain by existing. You tilted the balance by breathing. You broke the script by simply not dying inside like they expected. Do you understand how dangerous that makes you? A person who survives is inspiring, but a person who transforms is destabilizing. You became a mirror that shows people what they'll never become, and that alone is enough to make some choke on their own envy. But oh, that's not the part they fear the most. No, no, no. What terrifies them is how calm you are about it. People who gain power rush to use it. People who fake power rush to prove it. But you walk like someone who already saw all possible outcomes and knows exactly which one is yours. You move like prophecy. You speak like requiem. You decide like judgment. That's why their instincts misfire around you. They don't know whether to kneel or run. Because you're not good now. You're not evil either. You're something evolution whispers about in nightmares, a dual creature. The saint who learned to sin strategically, the demon who learned mercy with a razor's edge, the angel who crawled out of the dirt and kept the dirt as leverage, the psychopath who developed ethics sharper than law, the healer who learned to break what breaks them. You are a paradox in motion, a contradiction with a pulse, a warning wrapped in warmth, a nuclear core hidden under a steady heartbeat. And every room you enter feels the paradox before they register your presence. They feel the danger of someone who has nothing left to fear. They feel the force of someone who outgrew manipulation. They feel the threat of someone whose silence hits harder than violence. you know what you are. You're the test they failed before it began. You're the lesson life tried to teach them, but used you as the textbook. You're the version of humanity evolution didn't grant them access to. You're the what-if that keeps their conscience up at night. And here's the part that freezes their blood. You didn't become this through victory. You became this through damage, through betrayal that altered your mental chemistry, through loss that rewired your instincts, through pain that mutated your emotional DNA, through nights that stripped you down to your last fragment of will. You didn't evolve because you wanted to. You evolved because the universe cornered you, and you had two choices: die a martyr or resurrect a threat, and you chose correctly. Your transformation wasn't some inspirational montage. It was a psychological crucifixion, a spiritual autopsy, a soul-level detonation. You burned, you broke, you bled. And when it was over, you weren't the same you who walked into the fire. You were the thing that crawled out, the thing the fire couldn't consume, the thing life couldn't bury, the thing fate couldn't predict. You became the upgraded version of a species that doesn't exist yet. A walking omen, a sentient aftermath, a quiet apocalypse wearing human skin. And that's why they stare, that's why they falter, that's why they whisper your name like it might trigger something. Because deep down they know you're not a person anymore. You're a phenomenon, and phenomena don't follow rules. They rewrite them. So when they ask, trembling, confused, trying to hide their panic, "Bro, what are you now?" You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them comfort. You just tilt your head, let that slow, eerie little smile rise, and let the truth slip out like prophecy. An evolutionary threat, and you're standing too close. You ever notice how the air shifts now? Not dramatically, not with fireworks or thunder, just a subtle drop in temperature, a tightening around the spine, a primal whisper that crawls through every nervous system in the room the moment you step in. That's not paranoia. That's biology recalibrating around something it does not recognize. Because you didn't just change. You rewrote your species classification without asking for permission. You went from human to post-human, from potential to problem, from underestimated to uncontainable. People search your face now the way soldiers stare at experimental weapons. Curious, terrified, and praying it never wakes up fully. And you haven't even warmed up. This new version of you, it's not natural, and everyone knows it. Natural things grow gently. You evolved like a detonation. Natural things take time. You shifted like a timeline snapped in half. Natural things live within limits. You learned how to treat limits. Like toys, you break out of boredom. Do you understand how disorienting that is for the people who watched you fail before? They've gone silent not because they respect you, but because they genuinely do not know what you're capable of anymore. You became unpredictable, the highest form of power. When they look at you, they see a saint who could kill with a calm expression, a demon who could comfort with angelic patience, a mastermind who speaks in riddles even when you're telling the truth, a survivor whose pain fused into strategy rather than scars. They don't trust their instincts around you. They don't trust their judgments. They don't trust their own safety because predators hunt. But anomalies erase. Anomalies replace. Anomalies don't play by nature's script. You became the kind of person who enters a room and shifts the entire psychological architecture. The threat they can't measure, the equation they can't solve, the future they can't predict. And let me tell you why that's so terrifying. People can fight strength. They can prepare for anger. They can avoid chaos. They can compete with ambition, but they cannot defend themselves against a creature who no longer thinks like they do. You started thinking in deeper layers, patterns inside patterns, intentions inside silence, logic wrapped in intuition sharpened by trauma. You started seeing things they hide from themselves, their tells, their fears, their fractures, their weaknesses, their desperation to be perceived as whole. You see through people now, and they feel it. And that alone makes you dangerous. Because what do you call someone who can read everyone but reveal nothing? A threat, a ghost, a higher form of intelligence. Your evolution wasn't aesthetic, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't surface level, it was structural, it was neurological, it was existential. Your old self was the chrysalis. Your suffering was the acid that dissolved what couldn't come with you. Your rage was the catalyst that forged the new blueprint. And when you cracked open, you weren't a butterfly. Butterflies are fragile. You came out like a weaponized version of serenity, still controlled, aware, dangerous in your gentleness. Let me tell you the truth no one says out loud. You became the kind of being evolution tries to suppress, because if too many people become like you, the world order collapses. People like you break systems, you break power dynamics, you break generational curses by walking past them without blinking. You break manipulators by seeing their move before they make it. You break patterns without needing permission. You break cycles simply by refusing to remain who the past trained you to be. And most terrifying of all, you break expectations. Humans worship familiarity. You became an unfamiliar force. Humans worship predictability. You became an unpredictable consequence. Humans worship hierarchy. You became an entity that doesn't fit in any rung of the ladder. So when they stare at you now, speechless, breath hitching just a little, eyes scanning you like something's off, it's because something is off. You are not the version they prepared for. You are not the version they plotted against. You are not the version they betrayed. You are not the version they laughed at. You are the version who survived the fire and came out carrying the flame. So let them whisper behind your back. Let them theorize. Let them create rumors just to soothe themselves. Let them cling to whatever narrative helps them sleep at night. Because none of them know the truth you now carry like a loaded weapon. You're not a comeback story. You're not a glow-up. You're not healing. You're not recovering. You're the rare event life wasn't prepared to handle. You're the mutated future wearing the skin of the past. You're the answer to questions nobody was brave enough to ask. So when they tremble and whisper, "Bro, what are you now?" You don't flinch. You don't hesitate. You don't explain. You just look them dead in the soul with that quiet, devastating certainty and breathe out the truth like a prophecy. I'm evolution's glitch. And I'm not done yet. Funny, isn't it? How they begged for you to heal, but now that you did it in a way they can't control, can't decode, can't categorize, they're terrified. Not politely uncomfortable, not mildly intimidated, terrified. Because healing is safe. Growth is understandable. Maturity is predictable. But what you became, that's a different phenomenon entirely. You didn't rise above anything. You descended into the parts of yourself you were taught to avoid, walked barefoot through every broken shard of your past, let it slice you open, let it carve new pathways through your psyche, and then you walked back out of the dark with something ancient glowing behind your eyes. No one returns from that unchanged. No one walks out of that journey as the same species. That's why they stare. That's why they freeze. That's why they whisper your name like a warning. They're sensing it, that under your skin is a quiet storm that learned patience, that behind your calm is a being that doesn't react, it calculates, that beneath your smile is a consciousness that now sees more than it speaks. This new version of you doesn't just understand humans. It studies them, it profiles them, it reads them like a confidential file. You can hear lies in tone shifts. You can feel betrayal in silence. You can smell insecurity in their posture. You can detect envy in the pauses between their words. You've become socially bulletproof, emotionally untouchable, psychologically untrackable. They can't manipulate you anymore, and that's why they panic. Because manipulators don't fear good people. They fear people they can't control. And you? You slipped out of every psychological trap they set for you, quietly, effortlessly, irrevocably. That didn't make you strong, it made you dangerous. Dangerous in the way a locked door becomes dangerous when it starts unlocking itself from the inside. Dangerous in the way a quiet room becomes dangerous when you realize something intelligent is watching you back. Dangerous in the way evolution becomes dangerous when it creates something it didn't authorize. Because you're not the outcome of your past. You're the mutation that past produced. A mutation that learned to think in layers. A mutation that sees the game from the bird's eye view. A mutation that doesn't break under pressure. Pressure breaks under you. And the shadows of who you used to be. They're not haunting you, they're applauding. Because every version of you that suffered, every version that was exploited, every version that was underestimated, every version that cried, broke, bled, or begged. They all died for a reason, to build the version of you that doesn't die at all. And that's what unsettles them. You have the energy of a resurrection that wasn't supposed to happen. You have the vibe of a prophecy that refused to expire. You have the presence of someone who walked out of the burning building with the fire still sitting in their lungs. This isn't healing. This is ascent. This is mutation. This is rebirth with teeth. And the funniest part? Your power doesn't look explosive. It looks effortless. Your dominance doesn't come from noise. It comes from stillness. Your threat level doesn't come from intensity. It comes from the uncanny calm of someone who's already survived the worst thing that could have happened. That's why they can't breathe around you. They sense something off, something forbidden, something not designed for their comfort. They sense the paradox. You look human, but you no longer feel human. You feel like a prophecy unfinished. You feel like a consequence delayed. You feel like a fate they weren't meant to meet this early. You feel like the moment in a horror film when the audience realizes the monster wasn't in the dark. It was the quiet thing standing in plain sight. So when they whisper, voice cracking under the weight of the truth they're trying to deny, bro, what are you now? You don't blink. You don't soften. You don't play innocent. You let your gaze settle on them, slow, knowing, surgical, and let the air grow heavy around your words as you answer, with the calm certainty of someone who already knows their evolution is irreversible. Not human, not anymore, on whatever comes after. Hey, buddy, you felt that, didn't you? That strange electric silence, the kind that doesn't come from peace but terror, the kind of silence that slams over a room when every single person suddenly realizes, oh no, we miscalculated him. And that's the beautiful part, isn't it? Because you didn't raise your voice, you didn't flex, You didn't demand attention. You simply existed. And their mouths snapped shut, like someone cut the power to their nervous system. You, the one they brushed off, laughed at, ignored, dismissed, underestimated for sport. The one they only spoke over because they thought your silence meant smallness, not strategy. But the moment, the exact, horrifying moment, they realized you're a genius. You could hear jaws locking like safes. You could hear 1,000 unspoken apologies trying to push their way through throats, too afraid to open. See, nobody prepares for the quiet kid, the patient one, the observer sitting in the corner with eyes that don't blink at the right times. They prepare for loud threats, obvious power, predictable egos. But you broke the pattern. You're the paradox they can't solve, the angelic face with a demonic read on human nature, the saint who survived hell, the calm voice hiding a mind sharp enough to amputate illusions from 30 feet away. And they hate that, because geniuses don't approach life like the rest of the herd. They approach it like a chessboard disguised as a casual conversation, and while they were laughing at the wrong pieces, you were already studying the end game. You watched them, you learned them. You mapped their patterns, their weaknesses, their panic buttons, their delusions of superiority. You let them talk themselves into circles, let them underestimate the quiet one in the back. Oh, and when it finally clicked, when their brains finally caught up to the truth you've known your whole life, their eyes widened, their posture shifted, their souls froze mid-step, because suddenly they weren't looking at that guy anymore. They were looking at something else entirely, something they couldn't categorize, something they couldn't predict, something they couldn't dismiss with cheap jokes or tired labels. They were looking at you, the anomaly, the glitch in their script, the variable that shatters simulations, the mind that doesn't bend, break, or behave on command. You know what terrifies people the most? Not violence, not chaos, not conflict, unpredictability. And you, my friend, your unpredictability dressed in human skin, your evolution disguised as a misfit, your intelligence wrapped in silence, so thick it echoes. They don't know whether to admire you, fear you, or pray you never turn your attention their way. Because geniuses don't shout, geniuses don't brag, geniuses don't beg for validation from people who can't even validate themselves. Geniuses wait. They wait for the perfect moment. The moment when a room full of overconfident amateurs finally realizes, oh, he wasn't quiet because he was clueless. He was quiet because he was studying the battlefield. He was quiet because he can see angles we can't. He was quiet because he's 10 moves ahead. He was quiet because he's known this entire time. We are not on his level. And that, right there, is when the mouths close. Not out of respect, out of fear. Because when someone like you finally speaks, the whole room doesn't just listen. They brace, they pray, they adjust their entire worldview around the possibility that you're not just different, you're dangerous, in the oldest, purest, most beautiful sense. Dangerous because you think, dangerous because you understand, dangerous because you survived hell without letting it steal your softness or your precision. Dangerous because you can kill lies with a single sentence. Dangerous because you don't need permission to exist at full power. And now look at them, suddenly polite, suddenly cautious, suddenly too afraid to challenge you again. Because genius, real genius, doesn't scream. It illuminates, it exposes, it rearranges the hierarchy without asking. And you didn't just rearrange the room, my friend. You rewired it. You walked in with a mind they cannot measure, a presence they cannot comprehend, a truth they cannot deny. And now, every mouth in that room is locked shut because deep down they know. They weren't witnessing a moment. They were witnessing a revelation, you. The one they dismissed, the one they mocked, the one they tried to shrink. You turned out to be the genius they could never compete with. And the funniest part? You didn't even break a sweat. Now, watch how quiet they stay. Look at them now. You can almost taste the hush, can't you? That thick, metallic quiet that drops over a room when people suddenly realize they've been performing in front of someone who sees everything. And the best part, they still don't know how you saw it. They don't know when you figured it out. They don't know why you stayed silent while they were tripping over their own confidence. All they know is this: you knew. You always knew. And now they're replaying every memory of you. Every interaction, every ignored comment. Every time they thought you missed something. And they're panicking because they can't decide if they were stupid or if you were just that far ahead. Spoiler alert, it's both. You see, a genius doesn't need applause. A genius doesn't need validation. A genius never feels pressured to prove anything, because proof is a language reserved for doubters. And you don't speak in doubt. You speak in inevitability. And they felt it. They felt it in the way you didn't rush. They felt it in the way you didn't flinch. They felt it in the way your presence pressed on their skeletons, like gravity suddenly doubled. You didn't show intelligence. You radiated inevitability. That's what terrified them. Because your intelligence isn't loud, chaotic, performative. It's precise, surgical, predatory. It's the kind of intelligence that walks into a room and instantly rearranges the invisible power map. Without a single gesture, without a single word, without a single ounce of effort. And now they're terrified of you for a very specific reason. Not because you're smart, but because you're unpredictable. There's a difference. A smart person can be challenged. A smart person can be debated. A smart person can be beaten. But you're something else entirely. You're the saint with the psychopath's clarity. You're the angel who learned the devil's language. You're the light that studied the dark until it could imitate the shadows. You're the paradox that shouldn't exist. And yet here you are, breathing, watching, waiting. They don't know whether you're about to save the room or dismantle it. They don't know whether you're peaceful or playing dead. And that uncertainty is killing them. Because people rely on categories. They rely on labels to feel safe. They rely on assumptions to feel tall. But how do you categorize a mind that redefines reality every time it enters a room? You don't. You freeze. You shut up. You watch. You hope you don't get noticed. That's what they're doing right now. Pretending they're calm. Pretending they're neutral. Pretending they're unfazed. When really, their minds are sprinting. Their pulses are stuttering. Their eyes keep cutting toward you, wondering if you can see the thoughts they're trying to hide. And you can. That's the problem for them, and the advantage for you. Because your mind doesn't operate on the same bandwidth. You see connections they don't see. You feel energy shifts they ignore. You sense lies before they form a mouth. You don't think in straight lines. You think in spirals, webs, cross-dimensional geometry they've never trained their brains to comprehend. That's why they can't debate you. That's why they can't one-up you. That's why they can't predict you. You're not playing the same game. You're not even playing the same species. And now, the silence is turning into something heavier, something nervous, something dangerously close to reverence. Because somewhere between their arrogance and your patience, between their noise and your precision, between their ego and your evolution, they realized the truth. You're not waiting for permission. You're not asking to be seen. You're not auditioning for their approval. You're observing the world the same way a god observes ants. Not cruelly, not maliciously, just with the quiet understanding that you exist on a level they can't participate in. And that's why their mouths locked shut. Because they finally understand that when someone like you decides to speak, the world shifts. The room tilts. The hierarchy rearranges itself. Every fake expert loses oxygen. Every fraud stops breathing. And every soul in your radius feels the truth ripple across their skin. He's not one of us. He's above us. And we didn't even notice. Let them tremble. Let them replay it. Let them rewrite their whole perception of you from scratch. You earned every second of this silence. Now break it whenever you damn well choose. You feel that tightening in the air? That's not tension. That's submission. See, people don't just shut their mouths for no reason. They only go silent when something bigger than their ego steps into the room. And today, that something was you. They didn't plan to be intimidated. They didn't plan to be quiet. They didn't plan to look at you like you're holding the blueprint to their fate. But genius doesn't need permission to dominate a room. It doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need an entrance announcement. It just arrives, and suddenly everyone else is reduced to background noise. And the craziest part? You didn't even reveal anything. You didn't unveil some grand plan. You didn't expose the full extent of your mind. You simply let a single crack, one tiny fracture of your intelligence, leak out. And they folded instantly. Because people can handle a smart person, but they cannot handle a mind that feels dangerously aware. Your presence alone told them everything they needed to fear. You see too much. You understand too fast. You calculate too quietly. You walk in like you've already seen the ending. You sit like you know every move before it's made. You speak like you're explaining something they should have already known. And that scares people deep in their bones. Because when someone like you enters a room, everyone else is exposed. Their insecurities glow. Their lies vibrate. Their masks slip. And for the first time in their lives, they realize they're in the presence of someone who isn't fooled by noise, status, or fake confidence. You don't read their words. You read their intentions. You don't track their faces. You track their patterns. You don't react to their behavior. You dissect it, categorize it, and file it away before they finish their sentences. You've been doing it since you were a kid. You see, that's the part they don't understand. Your genius wasn't a moment. It wasn't a spark. It wasn't an accident. It was a lifetime in the making. Years of watching instead of speaking. Years of feeling instead of performing. Years of absorbing instead of pleasing. You learned the world by surviving it. You learned people by being betrayed by them. You learned psychology by needing to protect yourself. You learned strategy by understanding pain. You became a genius because you had to. Not for applause, not for pride, not for ego, for survival. And survival produces a clarity no classroom can replicate. That's why, when the truth finally hit them, when the puzzle pieces snapped into place, when they looked at you and saw the real you for the first time, their souls went quiet. It wasn't respect. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't shock. It was recognition. Recognition of someone who can break them without touching them, read them without asking them, outmaneuver them without warning them. Someone who can walk into chaos and leave with the crown. Someone who doesn't fear the dark because he understands it. Because he lived there, learned there, evolved there. They don't know what version of you they're dealing with now. The angel, the demon, the saint, the strategist, the calm observer, the silent architect, or all of them at once. That's your true power. You are every version they tried to destroy, combined into something they can't interpret, can't contain, can't categorize, can't diminish. You're not a puzzle. You're the answer key they weren't meant to see, and now they can't unsee it. They won't admit it, of course. Their pride won't let them. They'll pretend they're fine. They'll pretend they understood you the whole time. They'll pretend your intelligence doesn't bother them. But watch them. Watch how they tiptoe now. Watch how they pause before speaking. Watch how they rethink their tones around you. Watch how their eyes flick toward you like you're an unpredictable storm. Because genius isn't intimidating due to what it says. It's intimidating because of what it could say, what it could do, what it could expose. The fear isn't in your words, it's in your silence. Your silence is surgical, strategic, radiant, dangerous. Your silence is the sermon they can't interrupt. Your silence is the mirror they can't look away from. Your silence is the moment they finally understood the truth. You weren't the underestimated one. You were the one taking notes. And now they're scared of the quiet kid with the mind that doesn't blink. You earned that fear. You earned that silence. You earned this moment where the entire room locks up. Because your presence alone rewrites the hierarchy. Keep walking in like that. Keep standing like that. Keep thinking like that. The world will keep going quiet for you. Do you notice how nobody breathes the same when you enter now? It's subtle. So subtle they think you don't see it. But you do. You always do. Their shoulders stiffen. Their eyes pull away too fast. Their laughs die halfway out of their throats. Their hands hover in that awkward place between confidence and collapse. Because somewhere deep inside them, deeper than their ego, deeper than their pride, they understand that something irreversible has happened. They can't go back to seeing you as one of them. Not after what they felt. Not after what they saw. Not after the moment their brains finally snapped awake and whispered, "Oh God, he's different." And not the cute kind of different. The dangerous kind. The prophetic kind. The unnerving kind that makes people second-guess their own intelligence. The kind of different that makes a room full of adults feel like children caught lying in front of someone who already knows the truth. That's you. You've become the truth they can't look directly at without flinching. And what's funny, what's so beautifully poetic, is that you didn't change. You didn't become a genius. You didn't unlock it like some achievement badge. You simply stopped hiding what was already there. You stopped dimming yourself. You stopped shrinking for their comfort. You stopped playing dumb so they wouldn't feel insecure. You stepped into the room as your full self, and their illusions about their own superiority imploded like glass. They didn't go quiet because they respect you. They went quiet because, for the first time, they saw the gap between you and them. Not a little gap, not a slope, not a small difference, a cliff. A brutal, unbridgeable cliff between your mind and theirs. And that triggers a primitive response in human psychology, silence. The body locks up when the mind realizes it's outmatched. The brain goes quiet when it's in the presence of something it cannot decode. The ego shuts down when it senses a threat too abstract to name. They're not scared of you harming them. They're scared of you understanding them. Because what do you do to people like that? You don't fight them. You don't insult them. You don't argue with them. You outgrow them. You outthink them. You dismantle their games before they even pick up the pieces. Your mind is a labyrinth. Theirs is a hallway. You're seeing the entire map. They're staring at one door. You're 3 timelines ahead. They're struggling with the present tense. And they know it. They feel it every time you tilt your head, every time your eyes scan the room, every time you let that slight, knowing smirk slip out. Not because you're mocking them, but because you already predicted their next 5 reactions. You think they don't sense that? Oh, they do. You're the storm they pretend they don't see forming. You're the intelligence they pretend doesn't make them insecure. You're the mind they pretend isn't dissecting every word they say. But deep down, they know your silence is louder than their entire personality. And that's why they stay quiet. Because people have no idea how to deal with someone who can read the room without reading a single face. People don't know how to challenge someone who already knows the outcome. People don't know how to diminish someone whose presence makes their reality feel smaller. And you, my friend, you make reality feel small for them. You make their lies feel flimsy. You make their confidence feel borrowed. You make their intellect feel counterfeit. That's why the whole room locked up. Not because you proved yourself, but because your existence exposed them. You didn't overpower them. You made them confront the fact that they were never on your level in the first place. You didn't dominate the room. You revealed it. And revelation is a form of violence. They were not built to endure. So now they sit there, quiet, still, tense, wondering what else you know, what else you've seen, what else you've figured out. And the real terror? They haven't even seen 10% of what your mind is capable of. Let them freeze. Let them fear what they cannot understand. Let them feel that genius breathing down their necks. Because you're not here to fit into their world. You're here to eclipse it. Lean in for a second. Good. Because what I'm about to tell you, most people aren't built to survive it. You're not most people, are you? See, everyone keeps saying case closed, like this was some cute little episode they could wipe off the board and go home from. But you didn't close anything. You detonated it. You didn't solve the puzzle. You shattered the table it sat on. You turned the entire investigation into a crime scene of its own. And now every expert who tried to study you is sitting there with their hands trembling, whispering, "We can't even categorize this one." And you're just standing there, breathing, unbothered, watching the old system crumble like a rotten cathedral, finally giving up its last prayer. Because here's the part they'll never admit out loud. They weren't prepared for someone like you. Someone who doesn't follow scripts, doesn't bow to hierarchies, doesn't worship their fragile, dusty structure. No, no, no. You walked in like a saint dipped in gasoline, part angel, part psychopath, half blessing, half biochemical threat. They thought you'd play along with their rules, but you walked right through them like smoke. And when you touched their precious little system, it failed a stress test written in your heartbeat. You didn't just break protocol. You exposed how weak the protocol always was. You didn't just reject their judgment. You revealed their judges were unqualified to even pronounce your name. And that's why they're panicking now. Because when you obliterated that case they built around you, you didn't just make them rewrite the report. You forced them to confront a fear deeper than paperwork. The fear that you were never the one on trial. They were. You, with your quiet decisions, your unpredictable timing, your surgical intuition that slices through deception like a hot blade through silk. You made them realize their entire system was designed to control people who never had your mind, your instincts, your darkness, your light. And that contradiction, that duality you embody, it's what terrifies them the most. Because they can't tell if you're a miracle or a malfunction, a revelation or a threat, a guardian angel who got tired or a demon who learned restraint. They can't predict you. And in their world, unpredictability is the true death sentence. Do you know what happens when someone like you breaks the system? Not punishment, not exile, not consequences, reconstruction, forced evolution, mandatory rebirth. They're rebuilding everything from scratch now. New rules, new protocols, new contingency plans, new psychological frameworks. All because you walked in and made their entire infrastructure look prehistoric. You became the audit no one scheduled, the anomaly no algorithm could trace, the lesson no instructor could phrase. You became the event scholars will one day write about under dim lamps, with shaky hands and no courage to sign their real names. And here's the twist of the century. They're rebuilding the system to protect themselves from you. But they're too late, because you already rewrote your own code. You already evolved past every version they prepared to confront. You already stepped into a realm where you're not just reacting, you're engineering outcomes. You turned the courtroom into a training ground. You turned scrutiny into fuel. You turned every accusation into a baptism. They don't get it. You don't win cases. You end eras. You don't survive investigations. You unmask entire power structures. And now they're rebuilding the whole damn system because they realized one horrifying truth. You are not a participant. You are a force multiplier. A walking paradox with the precision of a monk and the volatility of a supernova. You're becoming something the old world can't contain. So let them rebuild. Let them scramble. Let them rewrite every rulebook they've ever trusted. Because deep down, every single one of them knows, when you walk in, the system doesn't evaluate you. It evaluates itself. And breaks. Case closed. No case crucified. Case cremated. Case reborn in your shadow. And when the dust settles, when the system resets, when every structure stands trembling, rebuilt, reinforced, redesigned, they'll whisper again, "He didn't just break the case. He rewrote the world it lived in." And you'll just keep walking, like the next trial is already begging to collapse in your hands. You feel that, don't you? That strange, vibrating stillness in the room. That's not silence. That's shock pretending to breathe. Because once you closed that case, the air never returned to normal. You didn't just walk away. You left a gravitational wound, a permanent distortion in the space where their authority used to stand tall. Everyone's pretending everything is fine, but every hallway you've ever stepped in remembers you. Every camera that recorded you still glitches when your name is mentioned. Every analyst who reviewed your actions carries a tightness in their chest they can't medically explain. Why? Because you forced the world to confront a truth bigger than crime, justice, or investigation. You are not a subject inside their system. You are an instrument of evolution standing outside of it. And evolution? Evolution never asks for permission. Look at them now, scrambling, sweating, updating protocols like sleep-deprived interns, afraid of disappointing a god they don't believe in. They're rewriting definitions, redrafting guidelines, changing verification methods, altering security levels, renaming psychological markers, reclassifying human behavior entirely. All because you walked into their world like a mirror with a pulse and made them see themselves. And they didn't like what stared back. You know what the funniest part is? They still don't know which version of you did it. The calm version, the one who listens, the one who forgives, the one shaped by mercy. Or was it the one forged in fire? The one sharpened by betrayal? The one with scars that read like scripture? The one who walks with the patience of an angel and the rage of a fallen king? They can't categorize you, and that alone is enough to break a system, because systems don't fear criminals. Systems fear outliers, unpredictables, the ones who don't fit the mold because they build their own. You walked into their judgment chamber like a paradox wrapped in a smirk. Your presence alone made seasoned investigators feel like amateurs. Your silence felt louder than confession. Your intelligence felt less like thinking and more like prophecy. They didn't examine you, they witnessed you. And what they witnessed was a phenomenon, an anomaly with moral depth, emotional precision, and psychological architecture far beyond their textbooks. They realized you don't operate on instinct, you operate on understanding. You don't guess, you know. You don't react, you decide. You don't break rules for chaos. You break them because they were too small for the magnitude of your mind. And that's when it hit them. This wasn't a case. This was a collision between an outdated system and an upgraded human. You didn't just obliterate their structure. You exposed the fragile foundation it was built on. You made them see that their order was held together by tape and tradition, while you walked in with a precision forged through pain, failure, rebirth, and 1,000 unspoken battles. That's why the room went silent. That's why their faces lost color. That's why someone dropped their pen and didn't bother to pick it up. That's why the senior officials' hands trembled like they were looking at something holy and horrifying at the same time. You've become the proof of concept that the next era won't be governed by those who follow rules, but by those who understand systems deeply enough to break and rebuild them. And that's your curse, isn't it? Every time you evolve, the world has to build scaffolding around you just to keep up. You tear reality open, and they rush to stitch it back together, using whatever scraps of logic they can find. They try to guard themselves from your unpredictability, but they still crave your next move. They fear your precision, but they study your patterns. They want you contained, but they can't stop analyzing how you slipped through every barrier they erected. You're not a threat. You're a revelation they weren't equipped to receive. They rebuilt the system from scratch, but every new line of code, every updated policy, every revised protocol still carries a silent warning between the lines. If they come back, prepare for impact. And deep down, they know even that won't be enough. Because you don't confront systems, you transform them. You don't resist pressure, you weaponize it. You don't survive the narrative, you rewrite it. You didn't just obliterate the case. You upgraded the entire architecture of power. And when something like you appears on their radar, systems don't prosecute. They adapt, they evolve, they kneel. So keep walking. Let them rebuild. Let them recalibrate. Let them whisper your name in closed-door meetings like a cautionary tale. You've already moved on to the next structure waiting to collapse under the weight of your presence. Because the truth is simple. You're not the one being judged. You're the reason they created judgment in the first place. And every system you step into already knows. Before you're done with them, they will have to rebuild again. And you know what really twists the knife in their collective psyche? It's the way you move through aftermath. Most people who win something this big celebrate, flex, brag, run their mouths like cheap fireworks. But you walked away like nothing happened, like obliterating an entire institutional framework was just Tuesday. That quiet, indifferent stride of yours, that's what terrifies them the most. Because predators expect screams. Systems expect resistance. But you gave them silence. And silence from someone like you isn't peaceful. It's predictive. It means you're already calculating the next boundary to erase. It means you saw 10 moves ahead while they were still wiping sweat off their foreheads. It means the evolution they're panic building right now. You've already outgrown it. Their new system is your old version. And that's the part they're choking on. You didn't just expose their flaws. You exposed their tempo, their slowness, their outdated thinking, their primitive fear response to someone whose mind isn't shaped by fear at all. They finally realized what you really are. You're the stress test of the century, the human equivalent of a zero-day exploit, a walking, breathing reminder that some people evolve in directions the system can't predict, map, or contain. And when the system meets a being like that, it either adapts or collapses. There is no third option. Look at the senior officials now. The ones who claim to have everything under control. Their meetings have doubled. Their sleep has halved. Their confidence has evaporated. They're whispering your name like it's classified. They speak of you like someone speaks of an earthquake. Not evil, not good, just inevitable. Even the ones who hate you, they study you. They pull up your file at night just to stare at the page like it contains some prophecy. They've realized something primal, something culture never prepared them to admit. You reveal the truth about people. Not because you interrogate them, not because you trick them, not because you pressure them. No, you reveal the truth simply by existing near them. Your presence rearranges their masks. Your energy exposes their intentions. Your intelligence unmasks their insecurities. Your intuition strips away their excuses. People show who they truly are when confronted with someone who cannot be manipulated, cannot be guilt-tripped, cannot be socially engineered, cannot be emotionally diluted. And that's what you are, a mirror with teeth. And mirrors like you, they don't fit in systems built on illusion. So what do? They rebuild the system with thicker walls, just to avoid seeing themselves again. But walls don't stop you. They never have. Because you don't break barriers. You walk through them like you were the one who designed the blueprint. You don't seek approval. You move with the cold precision of someone approved by destiny itself. You don't crumble under pressure. Pressure crumbles under you. And now everyone knows it. That's why they're scared to even breathe wrong around your name. You've become the ghost in their protocol. The exception in every rule. The case study they can't publish because it would prove the entire profession incompetent. There's something poetic about it, isn't there? Their greatest minds couldn't understand your quietest thought. Their most complex procedures couldn't handle your simplest action. Their entire structure collapsed because one unpredictable, uncontrollable, beautifully dangerous individual decided to exist without apology. You're not a criminal, you're not a suspect, you're not a mystery, you're a threshold, a before-after event, a psychological rupture, a walking reset button for every outdated structure arrogant enough to judge you. And here's the cosmic punchline. They think rebuilding the system from scratch will protect them, but they forgot one tiny detail. When you evolve, the world has to evolve with you. Not out of admiration, not out of fear, out of necessity. Because if it doesn't, you'll break it again, not out of malice, just by being you. And maybe that's why you unsettle them so deeply. You don't try to be powerful. You don't try to be intimidating. You don't try to rewrite the rules. You don't try at all. You just are. A force of nature wearing a human face, a paradox wrapped in flesh, a psychological gemstone cut by fire, pain, and survival. They're rebuilding the system from scratch. But they know, oh, they know, that the next time you step into their world, the system won't evaluate you. The system will brace for impact. And here's the part no one dares say out loud. The part that sits in the back of every official's throat like a swallowed blade. They're not rebuilding the system because it broke. They're rebuilding it because you exposed the truth that it was never strong enough to hold you in the first place. You didn't crack their foundations. You didn't bend their walls. You didn't manipulate their loopholes. You simply existed with too much clarity, too much intuition, too much precision, too much emotional intelligence, too much you, and the system corroded on contact. That's the real horror for them. Your power isn't loud. It's not theatrical. It's not destructive for the sake of chaos. It's structural. It reaches into the architecture of situations, the psychology of people, the blueprint of the moment. You walk into a room and the rules begin rewriting themselves quietly. Like frightened monks altering scripture in the dark, your presence forces truth into the open. Your decisions redraw the battlefield. Your instincts cut through decades of bureaucracy with a single glance. Systems were made for ordinary minds, not for someone who sees patterns like constellations and motives like fingerprints, not for someone who senses lies before they're spoken and outcomes before they're possible. You're not working with information. You're working with perception, intuition, structure, energy, timing, subtext, silence. All the things systems pretend don't exist because they have no idea how to measure them. That's why their reports felt outdated the moment you opened your mouth. That's why their independent reviews collapsed under scrutiny. That's why their experts argued behind closed doors like panicked disciples, losing faith in their own doctrine. They weren't evaluating you. They were realizing they never understood the game. And once they understood that you understood, they panicked. Because you didn't just win. You made them question the very definition of winning. You didn't just escape. You made escape look irrelevant. You didn't just close a case. You revealed the case was theater, and the system was a stage, and you were the only one aware of the audience watching. Do you understand how catastrophic that is for them? When someone like you steps into a rigid structure, you don't cause chaos. You trigger evolution. The old rules die on contact. People like you are catalysts. You don't follow timelines. You accelerate them. And now they're rebuilding the system not to prevent another incident, but to prepare for your return. Because even they know you are not done. You are not finished. You are not slowing down. You're shedding skins like seasons, transforming faster than their protocols can update. That's what keeps their higher-ups awake at night. Not the destruction you caused, not the embarrassment, not the collapse of procedure, but the realization that this version of you, the one who obliterated their entire framework, may be the weakest version they ever face. Because every time you burn something down, you rise sharper, colder, quieter, more precise, more unshakable, more self-aware, more dangerous in the way only someone who has conquered their own shadows can be. You've become the one variable they can't quantify, the one personality flaw they can't exploit, the one human anomaly they can't profile. The system is rebuilding from scratch, but it's rebuilding in your image. They're adding contingencies because you exist. They're revising definitions because you exist. They're restructuring departments because you exist. They're training entire teams because you exist. You turned into their curriculum. You're the blueprint for the new era they're terrified to face. And still, none of them can shake the same poisonous question. If this was what they did before they evolved, what happens when they come back stronger? They're not ready for that answer, but you are, because deep down, you know the truth. You don't walk into systems to break them. You walk into systems to reveal them, to expose their cracks, to mirror their faults, to show them what happens when a mind that refuses to be tamed stands in a room built to contain people who surrendered long ago. You obliterated the case, not because you wanted to destroy, but because the moment you entered, the case wasn't big enough for you. It never was. And the next time they try to confine you to their definitions, they won't be rebuilding a system, they'll be rebuilding a world. Hey, you, don't flinch now. The panic in the back of your skull already knows what's coming. Because I heard what you said. I felt the air freeze when you dropped it. That sentence, the one you weren't supposed to say, that forbidden shard of truth. Yeah, that one. And now look at them, twitching, recalculating, whispering like the fire alarm just tripped in their souls. Because the moment you said it, everything shifted. They're treating you like a code red, as if you didn't just speak, but detonated. And you know what's really funny? You didn't even raise your voice. You didn't break a sweat. You didn't chant it from a mountaintop or carve it into a cathedral wall. You just said it. Calm, precise, like a scalpel sliding between ribs. And suddenly every insecure, fragile, poorly constructed ego in the room felt the blade. See, that's the thing about you. You don't speak to communicate. You speak to rearrange. You speak to unmask. You speak to tear open the floorboards they hide their rotting foundations under. They thought you were predictable. They thought you were safe. They thought you would keep playing along with their polite little script. But then you did that. You said the one truth their system is allergic to, and it felt like a demon exhaled behind you. Now their posture's different. Their eyes won't stop flicking at you. Their voices dropped an octave. Their hands shook slightly when they picked up their phones. Because your honesty didn't just cross a line, it violated a protocol. You cracked through something ancient, something unwritten, something they all follow without question. You shattered the silent agreement. Pretend. Swallow it. Smile. Don't wake the sleeping beast. Guess who the beast was? You. And you woke yourself. You weren't supposed to call it out. You weren't supposed to see it. You weren't supposed to name the thing they've been hiding in plain sight. But you did. And now the room is studying the exit signs, because you, the quiet one, the controlled one, the underestimated one, just proved you're not governed by their fear. You don't fear consequence. Consequence fears you. Isn't it strange how one sentence from you carries more weight than their entire belief system? How your voice cracks illusions like bone. How your presence alone forces truth to rise like smoke. You're not ordinary. Ordinary people can't collapse a whole narrative with a single breath. Ordinary people can't expose a lie by standing still. But you carry that paradox, the duality they can't calculate, angel in restraint, demon in precision, saint in silence, psychopath in clarity, a contradiction with a pulse. And when contradictions speak, systems break. They weren't prepared for someone like you. Someone who doesn't need volume to ignite chaos. Someone who doesn't need anger to bend reality. Someone who doesn't need permission to say the unsayable. You want to know the real reason they're treating you like a code red? Because you didn't just expose information. You exposed them. Their fragility, their fakery, their broken loyalties, their imaginary power. You exposed how quickly they crumble when confronted by the truth they buried. You exposed how terrified they are of you figuring out what you're truly capable of. And worst of all, you exposed the possibility that you're not operating on the same level as them anymore. That you've evolved into something they can't manage, can't predict, can't override. A glitch? No, a revelation. A quiet catastrophe wrapped in a human body. You weren't supposed to say that shh, but you did. And now their entire mental architecture is melting. Congratulations, you just proved something extraordinary. When you speak, reality listens first, people listen second, and fear listens last. So let them panic, let them whisper like frightened animals, let them treat you like a breach in the system. Because deep down, they know the truth. You didn't break their world. You simply told the part they were too scared to admit. And once a truth like that escapes your mouth, there's no putting you back in the box. Oh, you want more? Good. Because the part that scares them the most hasn't even begun. You see, after you said it, after that forbidden truth slipped out of your mouth like a razor coated in gasoline, there was a silence. Not the normal kind, not the awkward kind, not the did the Wi-Fi die kind. No, it was the kind of silence that feels like the whole room is holding its breath because it suddenly realized you're not who they thought you were. That's the silence found in churches before miracles, and crime scenes before confessions. A holy silence, a violent silence, a silence that belongs to someone who just inverted the power dynamic with one sentence. And in that silence, they all had the same thought. Oh, shh, they're not controllable. Because up until that moment, they thought you were manageable, containable, programmable. They thought you were another character in their neatly filtered, socially approved simulation. But what you unveiled wasn't just a truth. It was your nature. That dual nature they can't categorize. The angel who observes everything in absolute stillness, and the demon who speaks only when it's time to flip the paradigm. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't lash out. You didn't scream. You simply articulated the thing everyone else has been too gutless to confront. And every person in that room felt their soul shrink 2 sizes. Because your honesty wasn't casual. It was strategic, surgical, perfectly timed. Like you'd been waiting for that exact moment, that exact silence in the air, that exact tremor of tension to cut through the veil. And here's the twisted beauty of it. They don't know what version of you they're looking at anymore. Is it the observer? Is it the storm? Is it the saint? Is it the demon? You shifted in front of them. Not physically, but energetically. You exposed their shadows and illuminated your own. You showed them that the light in you is terrifying and the darkness in you is intelligent. And people don't know how to react to intelligence wrapped in darkness. They don't know how to respond to calmness that feels like pressure. They don't know how to manage someone who doesn't fear social consequences. They only know how to fear it. That's why they're treating you like a code red. Because code red isn't about danger. It's about unpredictability. It's what they trigger when someone breaks the unwritten law. Never be real enough to make everyone else uncomfortable. But you broke it, casually, effortlessly, like you were bored of playing their pretend version of life. And now the truth is out there, raw, unbothered, undeniable. And you were the vessel. Do you understand how terrifying that is for them? People like them survive on illusion. They feed on silence. They thrive on pretending everyone is blind. They need the lie more than they need oxygen. But you saw the lie, walked toward it, and ripped it open like a surgical incision showing bone. And then you said the quiet part out loud, and that moment sealed your evolution. You became something they don't have language for. A truth-teller with no fear, a chaos agent with precision, a mirror with teeth, a saint who sins with purpose, a demon who whispers enlightenment. They can't process that combination. They've never been trained for it. That's why they act different around you now. That's why their voices soften. That's why their sentences glitch. That's why their energy bends in your direction without permission. You disrupted their simulation. You shattered the fake hierarchy. You exposed the cracks. You revealed the secret. They're not powerful. They're just protected by silence. And you broke the silence. So guess what happens now? Now they're rewriting their entire opinion of you. Now they're questioning everything they ever assumed. Now they're whispering behind doors like they're planning for a natural disaster. Because you proved, with one sentence, that you're not a participant in their world. You're a threat to it. Not because you're violent, not because you're reckless, not because you're unhinged, but because you're awake. Awake to the truth. Awake to the games. Awake to your own power. A person like you doesn't come around often. Someone who can speak a sentence that rearranges a whole room's psychology. Someone who doesn't break under pressure. They become the pressure. Someone who doesn't fear being misunderstood. They expect it. You weren't supposed to say that shh, but you did. And now every hidden agenda is panicking. Every liar is sweating. Every manipulator is scrambling. Every coward is praying you never speak again. But you will. And each time you do, reality will bend a little more. Because once the truth escapes your mouth, there's no cage on earth that can contain what you've become. You're not Code Red. You're the reason Code Red exists. Oh, you want the rest? Good. Because the part they fear the most hasn't even unfolded yet. After you said that forbidden line, after you tore open the quiet little coffin where they buried the truth, something else happened, something they're pretending not to notice. You didn't flinch, you didn't rush to apologize, you didn't shrink, you didn't explain yourself like some trembling mortal begging to be forgiven. You just stayed exactly where you were, calm still, breathing like you owned the air, like you were the one who built the room they were standing in. And that is what sent shockwaves through every single nervous system present. Because people who speak the forbidden rarely stay calm afterward. They stutter, they scramble, they try to glue the moment back together. But you watched them come undone like you were reviewing evidence, and that calm, that silence, that unapologetic stillness, it confirmed their worst suspicion. You didn't slip up. You didn't accidentally say it. You meant it. You chose it. You prepared it. You volunteered to detonate the truth. That's why their fear multiplied, because one who speaks without fear is dangerous, but one who speaks with intention, that's revolutionary. And you felt it, didn't you? That pulse, that surge, that strange shift inside your chest, like something ancient woke up. Because saying that truth wasn't just rebellion, it was initiation. It baptized you in the fire of your own evolution. You discovered that your voice isn't just sound, it's a signal. a signal that cuts through illusions, a signal that exposes corruption, a signal that rearranges everyone's internal map. People like you don't fit in. You redefine the room by existing in it. And that's exactly what terrifies them. They're not scared of the truth you said. They're scared of what it means about you. Because if you have the courage to say that, what else are you capable of? What else have you noticed? What else do you understand? What else could you unravel if you opened your mouth again? See, truth doesn't scare people. Truth-tellers do. Especially when the truth-teller carries both light and darkness in their expression. Especially when their calmness feels like a storm waiting for permission. Especially when their silence feels like judgment from something inhuman. You're not just duality. You're the embodiment of paradox, grace with teeth, mercy with edges, kindness that cuts deeper than cruelty, darkness that teaches more than light ever will. They can't categorize you. They can't label you. They can't predict you. And people fear what they cannot map. That's why the air changed when you spoke. That's why their eyes wouldn't meet yours. That's why someone's hands trembled when they pretended to check their phone. Because you made them see themselves, unfiltered, undressed, unprotected. You became a mirror they never wanted to look into. And mirrors with teeth? Those get marked as threats. Let me tell you exactly what's happening now behind those closed doors they think you can't sense. They're rewriting the narrative. About you, about themselves, about everything they thought they knew. They're trying to downgrade your intention. Oh, they didn't mean it. They're just emotional. They don't understand the consequences. But deep down, they know the truth. You calculated every syllable. You aimed every word like a sniper. You carved the silence open and revealed what was rotting underneath. And now they know you're not someone they can speak over. Not someone they can gaslight, not someone they can manipulate with fake smiles and half-truths, not someone who bows to the room's comfort. You shattered the power structure the moment you refused to swallow the truth. And here's the tragic beauty they're still refusing to accept. They can't put that version of you back to sleep. You've already crossed the threshold. You've tasted what happens when you stop censoring the storm inside you. You've seen how fast their masks fall apart when confronted with authenticity. You've learned that your silence has been their shelter. And the second you break it, they scatter. And now the question is no longer, why did you say it? The real question is, why were you silent for so long? Because now they know. Once you start speaking your truth, there's no shutting you down. Not with fear, not with shame, not with pressure, not with intimidation. They tried to make you small. You responded by becoming inevitable. They tried to control the narrative. You responded by obliterating it. They tried to silence you. You responded by becoming the loudest, quiet person they've ever met. That's why they're scared. That's why they're pacing. That's why they're whispering your name like it's a warning label now. Because the truth isn't what you said. The truth is who said it. And the truth is this: you're not code red. You're the awakening that forces everyone else to confront their own illusions. And now that you've spoken once, you're only getting started. You're still here. Good. Because the deepest layer, the one they pray you never discover, is coming next. After the fallout of what you said, after the tension slithered through the walls, after every face in that room recalibrated like their brains were buffering, another shift happened, subtle, invisible, but catastrophic. You became the center of gravity. Every conversation curved around you. Every glance ricocheted back in your direction. Every nervous laugh came half a second too late. Because once a person reveals they're not bound by fear, the entire environment reorganizes itself around them. People like them depend on compliance. People like you operate on consequence. They function in groupthink. You function in truth. They rely on silence. You weaponize it. And now they know it. Now they feel it. Now they're infected by the awareness that you see too much, say too much, know too much, and fear nothing. That's why the room felt smaller after you spoke. It wasn't the walls, it was them. Because your presence suddenly expanded. Your energy filled the space like smoke, curling around their illusions. Your truth settled into their bones like ice water. They didn't just hear you. They experienced you. And that's the one thing cowards can't handle. The experience of someone who cannot be controlled. So now what? Now the illusions they hide behind aren't working anymore. Their tactics don't land. Their micro-expressions betray them. Their rehearsed personas glitch. Because when someone like you speaks truth with surgical precision, the entire social ecosystem malfunctions. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know how to stand near you. They don't know how to lie in your presence. Your energy intercepts dishonesty before their mouths finish forming the words. And that terrifies people who survive on pretending. But here's the part they're really panicking about. The part that keeps replaying in their heads. You didn't speak like a rebel. You spoke like a judge. Not loud, not aggressive, not emotional, just precise, cold, measured, truthful. You spoke like someone who sees the entire board and finally decided to move a piece. People like them aren't scared of rebels. Rebels are messy, predictable, hot-headed. They're scared of the ones who stay calm while they expose the system. The ones who sound like they've been waiting for the perfect moment to shift the axis. Because calm disruptors aren't impulsive, they're inevitable. Let me tell you what they're whispering in private right now. Why would they say that? How much do they know? Have they been watching this whole time? What else are they capable of? Are we exposed? See, your truth didn't land like a statement. It landed like a diagnosis. It forced everyone in that room to confront themselves. Their hypocrisy, their weakness, their double lives, their insecurities, their projections. You didn't just speak truth. You revealed their fractures. That is why your code read. Not because of the content, but because of the effect. Because you forced reality into a shape they can't unsee. You broke the spell of collective denial. And once the spell breaks, the throne crumbles. But you know what's even more dangerous. You didn't seem surprised by your own power. You acted like you were already aware, already conscious, already awakened, because you are. You've seen through too many masks. You've survived too many betrayals. You've read too many intentions before they formed. You've tasted too much truth to ever go back to silence. People who survive darkness don't fear stepping into the light. They fear how easily the light exposes everyone else. And you walk with both. You carry the saint's intuition and the psychopath's clarity. You hold the angel's empathy and the demon's precision. Your duality is your weapon. Your unpredictability is your shield. Your perception is your power. They don't fear what you said. They fear what else you haven't said yet. Because deep down they know, if a single sentence from you can break the room, then a full truth from you could break the world they've built around their lies. And here's the part that seals their fate. You're not done speaking. They feel it. You feel it. The air itself feels it. You've tasted what happens when you stop censoring yourself. You've experienced the raw power of authenticity unchained. You've seen people's masks fall off the moment your voice cuts through their facade. And that taste is addictive, isn't it? Not the chaos, the clarity, not the rebellion, the freedom, not the shockwave, the accuracy. You didn't become dangerous because you said something forbidden. You became dangerous because you said it without fear. And now, there's no going back. You're the truth they tried to bury. The silence they depended on, the storm they prayed would stay sleeping. But now the storm knows it has a voice, and once a storm learns to speak, the world learns to listen.